Hi, good morning. My name is Nick DiGiulio, the EVP of Sales at POI Business Interiors, and thank you for joining us today for POI's latest webinar entitled, Are We There Yet? The Evolution of the Workspace. We find ourselves in the midst of the second wave of COVID-19. It's different, it's confusing, it's frustrating, it's creating a lot more questions than answers for sure. The highways are not quite back to normal, but traffic jams are back in the city. Transit is getting busier every day. Schools are open. More people are back to the office. Toronto's downtown core is still eerily quiet, but plans are being developed to return to the towers. We seem to be finding a way to live with COVID-19 around us. While we all know we are not there yet, we still need to ask the question, and everyone is asking, what does it look like now and in the future? While the office has been continually evolving for the past 40 years and even before, but since the introduction of panels, we know that the next period of time will be critical in creating the new workplace, which will allow for productivity and creativity both in the office space and from home. There is a sense that workplace change will be on steroids over the next while, but will it? Today, we have a panel of POI thought leaders discussing some of the key learnings we have pieced together from our experiences over the last number of months. Firstly, we have Julie Hicks, who's the studio director at POI, Marta Ola, workplace consultant and team lead, Fatima McIntosh Nicole, who is our workplace design strategist, Ann Gowan, our director of client management, and joining us today to moderate the Q&A session at the end of the webinar is Stephanie Morowitz, a project designer on our studio team. In order for Stephanie to facilitate questions or comments, please make sure to click the chat button and enter your question or comment. So thanks again for joining us, and over to you, Julie.
Thanks, Nick, and thanks everyone for joining us this morning. You know, when I think of the phrase, are we there yet? I think of those long road trips to the cottage or cross-country summer vacations with the kids in the back seat, where I swear they're asking this question at least every 5 minutes throughout the trip. With this COVID journey that we're on now, and all the information that's being broadcasted to us day to day, even minute to minute at times, it almost feels now like we're the kids in the back seat. And frankly, we're all car sick at this point. But we're all wanting to know, are we there yet? To kick this webinar off, we put together a short 4-minute video for you. Let's get started by watching the video.
Employee perceptions of their workplace have changed in the wake of the pandemic. With meeting spaces left vacant, collaboration settings laid bare, and workers mandated to their home offices, returning to the workplace presents an opportunity for organizations to rethink the purpose of the workplace. The office remains the hub of brand building, culture, and productivity. Now, expanding choice and control for employees over where and how they work to achieve their best results is the new challenge for employers across the country.
So how do you bring employees back to the workplace safely and allow them to maintain productivity? And how do you do it in a way that preserves their well-being and ensures they can operate at their full potential?
With businesses, schools, and restaurants slowly opening their doors again, companies are prioritizing the return of employees into safe workplace settings. And as the workplace evolves and companies adapt to the new reality, people are asking the question, are we there yet? What we know is that the time horizon is unclear, and even with safety protocols and guidelines now in place, what comes next is uncertain. Business continuity strategies have been centered around density, geometry, and division in order to safeguard employees in the workplace while supporting productivity. Density means managing capacity by reducing occupancy within a space. Geometry is the placement and positioning of tools and technology within the work setting to promote physical distancing, while division is the addition of physical barriers between occupants to minimize the spread of pathogens.
So how do employees feel about returning to the office? And does the office still matter?
Seeing my peers again within a safe environment has made me feel reconnected. I didn't realize how much I missed that sense of community.
Although I'm still very safety cautious, it's time to get back to better collaboration with my colleagues, and our workplace truly fosters it.
Working from home has been an adjustment, especially with all the family around. Being back gives me an environment where I can be more creative.
I enjoy working remotely. My home office environment provides me with easy access to amenities and saves me on commute time. However, returning to the office does provide me with more choice and control of how and where I work my best. I look forward to mixing it up.
Well-being is the new workplace imperative, and companies across the board are reimagining their office spaces to support safety while continuing to foster innovation, collaboration, employee engagement, and retention in order to drive business results. Companies now need to provide cleaning, signage, and other safety-driven protocols to ensure cognitive, emotional, and physical well-being within the workplace. With the evolution of work, workers, and the workplace from where it was to what it is becoming, it is critical that organizations revisit the purpose of the office to once again solidify their brand and culture. And that equals stronger team cohesion, better use of real estate, flexible distributed team ecosystems both in the workplace and at home, happier employees, and improved business results.
POI's connected solutions deliver safe and innovative workplaces by creating the best employee and customer experiences to meet the needs of today's and tomorrow's changing businesses.
Are we there yet? It's definitely not an easy question to answer, nor do we really have any of the answers right now. And definitely Siri or Waze, they're not going to tell us how much time before we're there yet. So as we navigate this journey, we're continuously course correcting and picking up key learnings along the way. Key learnings that we want to keep because we know they're contributing to our next evolution. One of these key learnings we've discovered is our need for human connection. We've all seen and answered the surveys that ask, what do you miss most about the office? You saw some of that in the video. And the resounding answer has been face-to-face interaction. Email and instant message overload, and of course Zoom fatigue, which we're hearing about all the time now, are a huge part of why we're missing that face-to-face interaction. However, we felt there had to be more to this need for connection. So we dug into it a little bit deeper. Today, I'm going to share some thoughts from Susan Pinker's book, The Village Effect, where she does a deep dive into how face-to-face interaction is happiness, learning, resilience, and longevity. In addition, we're going to investigate some ideas around safety and making the workplace a destination. We'll explore the POI workplace and what we've done to change our space to support physical distancing and safety. We'll also share applications and ideas as well as thoughts around the case for culture. The Village Effect takes a scientific approach to the human need for social interaction. It poses the idea that our very survival is dependent on our universal hunger to connect, and that much of our behavior from birth to death can be explained by this need for connection. It goes on to equate that this connection, this real-time face-to-face connection, is equal to our body's need for life-sustaining things like physical activity, proper diet, and even antibiotics. It's suggested that the relationships we develop through this face-to-face contact can affect how we think, who we trust, and even where we invest our money. They affect our sense of satisfaction with life, our cognitive skills, and even how resistant we are to infections and chronic diseases. It even positioned that social contact can effectively rewire our brains and nudge us to make life-altering decisions. When we think about the workplace, we know in order to innovate, we need to be creative and take some risks. In order to be creative and take some risks, we need to be able to trust those that we're taking risks with. And we know the only way to trust someone is to get to know them. Making life-altering decisions sounds like taking risks to me, and I sure want to make sure I'm doing those with people I trust. The book also indicates that cyber connections are no replacement for face-to-face interactions, and that live interaction actually sparks far greater activity in the brain regions that are linked to social cognition and reward. So, how have we been able to continue to be creative and innovate in these remote environments? Well, we have to remember that in many cases, that pre-existing social capital may have played a part in some of our success. Social capital is that knowledge and mutual trust that we built in our relationships through face-to-face interactions. I already know you, so I trust you. Therefore, I'll continue to take risks with you. In The Village Effect, the author speaks about a number of different social activities that we perform regularly that are rooted in this need to connect and belong. Activities such as meal times, spiritual gatherings, sports teams, and even education experiences help enhance our sense of community and culture. Through their research, they found that children who participated in meal times benefited by enriched vocabulary and empathy. That reading facial expressions during meal times was a place for practice in making connections before testing these behaviors in the real world. Throughout our lifetime, meal times with family and friends provide a foundation for most of our social experiences. Spiritual gatherings were discussed as a way to bring people together in one place for a common purpose and a common experience. They were often likened to that of being part of a village, that the benefits were not only the spiritual experience, but also the feeling of belonging to a community. Education is a very timely topic for those parents, myself included, who have children in school right now. When we think of the classroom and our students' opportunities for learning, what we often miss is that they're not just learning about the math problem of the day, they're also learning and exercising the skills they need to develop human connections. I know from myself and other parents in my community, the decision to send our children back to school during this pandemic was due to their need for in-person peer-to-peer connections. For organized sports teams, the development of trusting relationships between players and coaches is a crucial part of building strong foundations for a successful team. While reading this book, I actually reflected on some of my own personal experiences when it came to community and relationships, and it made me think of two stories that I wanted to share with you today. The first story is about my daughter. That's her in the picture above. She played competitive basketball when she was younger. In her first year of competitive basketball, a year that included vigorous practices, weekend tournaments, a ton of carpooling, and the occasional social event, the team ended the season surprising us, clinching the bronze medal in the championship tournament. Throughout her basketball career, she played both competitive and recreational basketball. With the competitive teams, the girls were together on the court 3 to 4 days a week, and their skill sets were very well matched. While in the rec leagues, the girls were made up from all different skill sets, different levels of basketball experience, and it was more a come and play once a week type activity. When she transitioned from competitive basketball to the rec league, she got on the court her first game and played with the same intensity and competitiveness as she had in the previous team. However, as the games went on, I started to see frustration in her face and hesitation in her play. So when I talked to her about what was going on in the court, she said to me, "Mom, the players just aren't where they're supposed to be. There used to always be someone there to catch the ball." So as it became clear to me that while the girls on the competitive team had become very skilled little ball players as a result of their time together, they also developed trusting relationships that allowed them to take risks and make decisions without even thinking, because they knew there would always be someone there to back them up and catch that ball. Quite possibly these trusting relationships that were built through this common purpose were the key ingredient to their success. So if I think of this story and how it relates to the workplace, I think of 4 things: common purpose, trust, risk, and success. I was reminded of my second story when the Village Effect explored how our weight gain or weight loss is affected by our social connections. It indicated that research confirmed that as your friends change, so do your ideas about what's acceptable, whether it's what you're eating, drinking, or even what you're buying. The book actually cites Weight Watchers as being the only commercial approach to weight loss that works. Now, I'm definitely not trying to sell you on a weight loss program. However, it explained that Weight Watchers uses the social features of eating to produce results. Okay, so this is where it gets personal. I myself have been a Boomerang Weight Watchers member for years. You have a couple of options when you become a Weight Watchers member. One is a community membership and the other one's an online membership. With the community membership, you're encouraged to attend weekly meetings, to share stories, recipes, celebrate success, and just generally help keep your goals on track. As an online member, it's you and the app, accountable to no one but yourself. The majority of my time with Weight Watchers was as an online member, and I struggled staying on track and seeing results on the scale. It wasn't until I joined a Weight Watchers at Work program where a weekly community meeting with my colleagues was part of the program. Let me tell you, it did the trick. I hardly missed a meeting. I took some risks and shared some personal information, and I lost 30 pounds. The total weight loss of the group was over 300 pounds. And those with the most significant weight loss were those that regularly attended the meetings. So while this is a completely different story than my first one about my daughter, some similar things were happening. We had a common purpose, we trusted each other, and we took some risks, and we experienced success. So how does all of this loop us back to the workplace? Well, if our survival, or we could even call it success in life, is dependent on our need for face-to-face human connection, we could also say that for success in the workplace, we must have opportunities for these types of connections to happen. Somewhere where we can come together for a common purpose, build a community and a sense of belonging, where we can create trusting relationships that will inevitably fuel business success. I love this quote from a recent article in the Globe and Mail. How can culture, community, and a sense of belonging be preserved if there's nowhere to go? With the current pandemic and the work from home phenomenon, it's made many of us question the purpose of place, especially the workplace. However, if human connection needs place, then place must have purpose. I know we're all still struggling to get back to some of those social activities that you saw in the slides earlier, but knowing now that place has purpose, there is and there has been a refocus on making the workplace a destination again. A destination that's somewhere that you want to go, but also somewhere that is safe to go. In the next portion of this webinar, Marta's going to walk you through some ideas around safety in the workplace, and she's going to share some things that we've actually done here in our own POI offices.
Thanks, Julie. I particularly enjoy road trips, so I really enjoyed your story about the long drives with the kids in the back seat, asking, are we there yet, with so much anticipation, but inherently trusting that you will eventually reach the destination safely. In the workplace, employee well-being and safety have been key elements of modern office design for some time, but now they've become essential. Our basic need to feel safe has become paramount. Not just physical distancing measures needed to mitigate health risks, but a sense of psychological safety, which fosters social interaction when we're at ease with one another. Our news and social media feeds are inundated daily with statistics and recommendations from health experts. We've learned much more than we ever thought we'd know about a pandemic, both the risks and our individual responsibilities to protect ourselves and those around us, our family, our friends, and now as we prepare to return to the office, our colleagues. KPMG polls showed that 82% of Canadians trust their employers to take and maintain all necessary health and safety precautions. So POI's planning began long before we were ready to open. We understood that staff needed both to be reassured it's safe to return and inspired to return to a compelling environment that supports their physical, cognitive, and emotional well-being. a place they want to be, not just have to be. In preparation for reopening, POI surveyed our employees and the results were clear. Human connections with colleagues was the #1 reason people want to return to the office. The novelty of working from home all the time is wearing off. We're cautious, but we're ready to venture out and reconnect. We also recognize how individual our experiences of the pandemic have been, and that we're all deeply impacted in some way. So, armed with statistics and employee sentiments, our task force went to work, updating work settings, implementing protocols, and developing POI's Safe Work Playbook to support a warm and welcome back to our office. It's a work in progress, and we continue to fine-tune as the science evolves, so we're already on version 5 of that playbook. Whether it's physical distancing or requirements to wear PPE in the office, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. What amounts to reasonable steps will vary by workplace, and some environments or industries will demand more extensive measures than others. Timelines will also vary. Physically changing the workplace can help reduce risks and improve employee comfort and confidence, but it can only go so far. The biggest changes in the short term have been behavioral, trying to make the office a pleasant, although somewhat distant place to go, and encouraging innovation and collaboration. These strategies were used in combination to create spaces that, when supplemented with new safety guidelines, are allowing people to confidently return to our office. And on that note, I'll hand it over to Fatima to share some examples of how these measures have been implemented at POI.
Thank you, Marta. In this segment of the webinar, we are going to take a deeper dive into many of the shared spaces that you saw in today's video and share with you the strategies that we employ to adapt them to ensure that people using them can be safe and feel safe to ensure continued productivity by addressing the recommended safety guidelines and protocols that Marta outlined based on the science that we know today. We hope to convey that it is more important now than ever before that architecture, furniture, and technology work together to create resilient workplaces that can easily adapt to be both safe now and in the future for whatever comes next. We have learned over the past 7 months that focus work can be performed away from the office, and that the workplace ecosystem has been extended to include the home office. We know that in the foreseeable future and even beyond, that the home office will remain an essential part of this ecosystem, as we cannot all return to the office at the same time to support physical distancing. However, we have also learned, as Marta said, that people want to return to the office to socialize and collaborate in ways that are just not possible remotely. We at POI are no exception. 90% of POI employees answered face-to-face interaction to the question, what do you miss most about the office? So how do we ensure that our shared spaces remain the compelling, desirable, effective, high-performing social and collaborative spaces that they were prior to COVID-19? We do this by addressing the same concepts outlined in the video and put forth by Steelcase in their Navigating What's Next guide: geometry, density, and division. In addition to density, geometry, and division, we will look at the design considerations that you see outlined here in context. They are essential to creating spaces that provide the physical and psychological safety needed for these shared spaces to remain effective and desired destinations. The reality is that we are all in this together. We are all facing the same challenges at the same time, and we all have an opportunity to learn from each other. Therefore, we felt that it was important for us to share how we have re-envisioned some of our most desired shared spaces to create an environment where our employees feel safe and connected. We're going to get started with our Work Cafe. As you saw in the video, it's a dynamic space designed for social connection, collaboration, focus, and innovation. Designed for real work to happen, it provides a palette of postures, tasks, stool, lounge, whiteboards, and access to power to ensure that this space supports productivity and collaboration, and a relaxed aesthetic provides psychological comfort. This is a place that people feel good in and they want to go to. Today, these characteristics remain the foundation of this space. However, to continue to make this space a desired destination, we took into account several design considerations to allow our team to safely socialize and collaborate. Density has been significantly reduced by removing seating and the tables that were along the perimeter windows to support physical distancing. Sanitation stations have been added to all of our shared spaces, making cleaning wipes and sanitizer accessible to everyone, everywhere. And signage is used to reinforce protocols and behaviors. We ask our employees to clean before and after the use of shared spaces. And in this space, we have leveraged existing technology to reinforce that protocol messaging. We have changed the geometry of the seating to eliminate sitting face to face and have added surface decals to indicate where individuals should sit or stand that adhere to the recommended 2-meter physical distance. This next 8-person meeting room is our Waterloo room, and it is the most desired meeting room in our office. It is designed with a residential aesthetic. It offers rich and diverse materials, a palette of postures, access to flexible power solutions, and supports digital and analog content sharing. Today, this continues to be one of our most desired meeting spaces. As I mentioned earlier, we know that we cannot all come back at the same time. Therefore, we need to ensure that all of our collaborative spaces are designed for real work to happen and allow us to quickly and seamlessly collaborate with our colleagues that are working remotely. Even though this room now supports smaller in-person meetings, the addition of video conferencing technology supports large team collaboration. Positioning the camera across from the whiteboard ensures that this space continues to support generative collaboration with the sharing and creation of new ideas. This next space is our Learn Lab. It is our multi-purpose space where we come together to learn, collaborate, and pre-COVID often celebrate. This large space and flexible furniture allows this room to adapt quickly and easily to meet our needs. The large surface hub and personal use marker boards allow for active collaboration, participation, and content sharing. Today, the flexibility of the furniture in this room allowed us to easily change the geometry by rearranging the seating and the tables to eliminate sitting directly across from one another. As we look to the future, we will need to design for this type of adaptability in the majority of our spaces. The technology in this space continues to allow us to seamlessly and actively collaborate with our colleagues working remotely, and the personal use of whiteboards now allow individuals to share content right from their seats, thereby eliminating the need for them to navigate the space to support physical distancing. We have also leveraged technology here. Our room reservation system screens are easily readable from a distance, therefore reducing the need to physically navigate our office space to find an available meeting space. And the analytics, they help us determine our cleaning regimens and understand the space type preferences at this time. Moving away from the enclosed shared spaces, we're going to show you now one of the dynamic team neighborhood that you saw in the video. It provides a range of work settings to support our team members throughout the day. Designed for well-being, this neighborhood offers choice and control with a variety of workstation types, an array of individual focused lounge spaces offering different levels of privacy, and small spaces for group collaboration with meeting rooms along the perimeter and a freestanding pod. Multiple strategies were implemented in this space to ensure that it remained an active and desired workspace with the performance principles of privacy, posture, proximity, and personality remaining the foundation of the space. We have added division here. There are multiple different types of screens throughout the space. Employees are able to position them to their comfort level, particularly along corridors and adjacent collaborative spaces. Designed for adaptability, the freestanding pod is easily deployable anywhere in the space. It has been moved to make space for this open, dynamic collaboration space. Creating spaces such as this one where people can naturally distance themselves with flexible furniture allows the users greater comfort than when they're in an enclosed space, some users that is. This hackable space was created with mobile, flexible furniture, technology, and power that enables easy reconfiguration, distancing, allowing the space to expand and contract as needs change. And finally, the last design consideration that I'm going to touch on is designing for disinfecting. Design, materiality, and performance have been carefully considered to create each shared space that is informal and inspiring and productive. While research continues on the virus transmission through surfaces, the pandemic has created a new focus on the cleanability of the residentially inspired finishes and fabrics of today's shared spaces. Designing for disinfecting does not mean that we must abandon these rich textures and soft surfaces for hard surfaces such as plastic, acrylic, and glass. Many of the surface materials in our shared spaces, here we are showing our London room, can be easily cleaned and disinfected. Marker boards, wood veneer, laminate surfaces, painted and plastic components can all be cleaned and disinfected with EPA-approved cleaners such as Lysol. Seating upholstery can vary widely from woven, knits, leather to non-woven materials. Cleaning of these materials varies, however, there are a variety of bleach cleanable materials that are available. And finally, vertical soft surfaces, such as fabrics on panels, walls, and screens, they vary as well. But there are a variety of materials, including PET, that can be easily cleaned with soap and water and disinfected with diluted bleach solutions. It is our hope that you have found the sharing of our spaces insightful and that you leave today's webinar equipped with strategies and solutions that you may implement in your own shared spaces so that they remain safe, desirable destinations for your teams, either now or in the future. We at POI are committed to continuing to share research-driven solutions as the workplace continues to evolve and we learn more. I will now hand it over to Anne, who will take a deeper dive into how the workplace plays an integral role in shaping an organization's culture. Over to you, Anne.
Thanks, Fatima. And I think that this whole thing culminates in culture. And so I want to talk about a case for culture, and that it's rooted in community and social infrastructure that connect people and shape how we interact. Organizations manage behavior, not culture. Behaviors in terms of what is encouraged or rewarded, experience shape behaviors, and behaviors over time is culture. The modern workplace provides the infrastructure needed to foster those relationships, to build communities of work, and allow people to achieve more. An article that was recently appeared in Forbes magazine, written by Tracy Brower, entitled "Why the Office Simply Cannot Go Away." She writes a very compelling case for the workplace. Essentially, there are 5 pillars that describe the power of place and why it matters. The first being humanity and innovation. We're social creatures who need social interactions and to make social connections. Those unplanned encounters in our offices blend the best thinking both between and across teams to come up with the best ideas. The second pillar, and I think this has come loud and clear through various stories we've shared, is purpose and energy. So establishing common ground and alignment in sharing the same mission and goals, a place that fosters the energy of, all being in this together, to row in the same direction and to be inspired by your environment. When we look at the third pillar, it's health and well-being. Marta talked about the whole idea of safety and how safety is a big part of health and well-being. We have to also think about the different settings in the office place. Alone and together, the workplace offers physical movement and a mental relief. When you travel from place to place versus staring at the computer screen on one scheduled Zoom call after another, we actually remember ideas and discussions better with physical landmarks and the ability to be able to have visual cues and recall in meeting rooms that provide information persistence through what you saw in Fatima's renderings of whiteboards and technology, allowing us and our teams to be much more efficient and effective with our outcomes. The workplace provides a physical demarcation between home and work, something that we've definitely been missing of late. Another pillar that is really important to culture is talent and engagement. It's proven that the workplace environment weights very heavily on the decision of potential employees to join an organization, and it's a manifestation for attraction and fostering growth for employees. Last but not least is empathy and culture. Anecdotally, I'm hearing from all different walks of my life, more and more people indicating that they are experiencing a shift from that productive phase of working from home, and some experts actually now call that fear-based productivity, to being less engaged in the organizational direction or team outcomes. According to MIT research, physical distance can turn into psychological distance. And the workplace builds trust amongst our colleagues, and the proverbial how we get things done around here are established through physical presence. And so through our own experience at POI, probably very similar to your organizations, we found that working from home definitely offers some level of effectiveness, and nobody's saying that or denying that. The office is necessary on multiple levels, however, for our sense of purpose, our sanity, our humanity, and our culture. It's not an all or nothing approach. The best strategy, and I think you can see from all the different parts of this presentation and webinar, the best strategy combines working from the office and from home. According to the Society for HR Management, 1/3 of companies are having difficulties with their organizational culture, and that there is a risk of this cultural decay with an exclusive work from home approach. We also, as leaders, we looked at and started to implement thinking about work styles. So our leadership team looked at the return to office strategy. We focused on the importance of making all people feel comfortable through the lens of work styles. We recognize that people have different preferences. Half the population are introverts and half the population are extroverts. As leaders, considerations and accommodations need to be explored in order for all people to contribute their best ideas and do their best work at the office with their peers. Planning for more openness to accommodate physical distancing does not mean that we create an extrovert-only environment. The social capital side of things, and that has also been illustrated in different ways here, is goodwill that is built through personal interactions, resulting in a shared understanding of people, of each other's points of view. Social capital erosion results when people don't have access to the power of place. Julie's story about her daughter and the basketball team is a great parallel to our teams in our organizations. Social capital can build to be so strong that we know without a doubt someone will be there to catch the ball as we pass it. And so our space is a real powerful signal that innately expresses our mission, our vision, our employee experiences, the ties to our community, and most of all expresses our values and our priorities. The workplace is a powerful symbol, and one of the many reasons we are so passionate about bringing people back to the office. Our workplace is the manifestation of the intangible norms and values, a beacon that is a visible artifact reflecting our people, our brand, and our culture. That is what we call the power of place. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie, who is going to facilitate the questions that have been coming in. Over to you, Steph.
Thanks, Anne. So much great information packed into that presentation, and that's obvious in the few questions that have come in throughout the presentation. So keeping time in mind, we're going to jump right into it with the first question. So the first one I'm going to send over to Julie. The question reads, due to the number of growing cases of COVID in Ontario, is this really the right time to consider back to work policies?
Yeah, I think any time is a great time. Being part of our COVID response team here at POI, we started looking at this back in May. And you know, the information that we're getting, as I mentioned earlier, is changing day to day. So there's really no reason to start now. We're actually on version 5 of our playbook, and we actually didn't return to the office until September, the beginning of September, when the kids went back to school this year. So Since September, there's been 5 revisions, and we've been making changes all along the way as the information changes, as our people started to use the space, and we started to discover that, you know, maybe there was additional protocols we needed to put in place, or maybe there were some protocols that we could have tweaked to make them better, or maybe there were some things that were just, we didn't need anymore once we actually saw people using the space. So I think, you know, you have to start thinking about it now. You know, numbers were down, and now numbers are back up again, and different places of, the province are back into, the earlier stages, stage 2, things like that. So we really have to start thinking now and look at it as a living document that constantly needs to be changed and updated for what's happening right now.
That's perfect. Thanks, Julie. Speaking of COVID workplace, there's a question that came in terms of design criteria. So I'm going to send this one over to Fatima to answer. So Fatima, the question asks, what would be the most important design criteria when designing for a COVID workplace? Which principles or protocols would you put in place first?
Thank you, Stephanie. Great question. And I would say start off with those 3 key strategies that were put forth in the Navigating What's Next guide: density, geometry, and division. They can be applied to all of your spaces. Density perhaps is the number 1. We know that we can't all return to the office at the same time. It is not safe to have high density in your spaces. So just by addressing that and removing some of the seats and some of the tables from your space, you're already mitigating the spread. And then geometry, ensuring that the furniture is oriented away from each other so we don't have people directly coming into close contact with each other face to face. And then lastly, division. Wherever you cannot create that physical distance, ensure that you have barriers, and they can be things that you have existing in your office now, whether it's filing cabinets along the perimeter, freestanding screens, and anything that you can provide to your employees to allow them to create those boundaries for themselves to increase user comfort. So I'd say those 3 key strategies.
Definitely, those are great ones to start with for sure. There's a question that came in, and I'm going to send this one to Julie. It asks, can you please highlight a few of the changes/learnings to your playbook since the return to the workplace?
Yeah, a number of things that we've changed. I think the one that probably is top of my list is really our wayfinding. We originally had to look at the space and we created these one-way traffic flow patterns to make sure that we weren't having two-way traffic throughout the space. We're fortunate we have a large atrium space in our building, and that particular space was one space that we did direct one-way traffic through, and we found that because the space is so open, people can see each other and they can avoid each other. So we've actually since updated our plans and removed those one-way traffic flow signs from that area. We also looked at our work cafe and how we were using our work cafe. Originally, we decided to take all small appliances out of the work cafe and have folks bring their own lunches, preferably lunches that they didn't need to heat up or go out to lunch. We encourage people, if they wanted to, they could eat at their desk, things like that. Now we've kind of seen people have come back, and the traffic in the lunchroom is not as bad. Our cleaning, our user-based cleaning, so our clean out policies are working. So we felt a little bit more comfortable in letting some of those appliances come back as well, so people could, more people were coming back and needed to bring their lunches. In addition to that, there were some changes to our sick policy to incorporate, time for having to be off because you weren't well, because frankly, if someone's not well, whether it's COVID or not, we want them to take the time and get better and not bring it back to the office. I think those are the top 3 that I can think of right now. I'm sure there were some other small ones, but it was really important that we watched and understood how our people were using the space and made some of those small changes to make it be a place they want to be and easier to work in. Thanks, Steph.
No problem. Okay, and there's one here for you, and the question asks, how would you respond to a client who is postponing or canceling projects due to COVID? They do not feel they need to be in the office until maybe 2021 or 2022.
Thanks, Steph. Sure. I mean, it's a tough time for us to start, kind of knowing what the right thing is to do. What I think about postponement in 2021 and 2022 and hoping that things go back to normal may not be the case. I think we need to be really thinking about all of what we just talked about here in terms of social capital, culture, brand, engagement, all of those things take place in a workplace. And so we understand, and we've seen things that are being postponed until 2021 and 2022 to hope that things go back to what it was. It may not. And so when you realize the need for the workplace, or everybody knows the importance of it, you have to start planning for the return to the office, even if it is 2021 and 2022. Because we need to be planning now, and design plays a huge part in this for what's next, so that we aren't caught unawares as we were in March. And so canceling, no. Postponing, we understand, of course, that's going to happen, but you have to start thinking about all of these principles even for 2021 and 2022. Hope that addresses that. Thanks.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks so much, Anne. Julie, there's another question that came in earlier in the presentation, and it reads, in parts throughout the presentation, you talked about your playbook. I'm part of an internal team at my company addressing similar issues, but we have found it to be quite challenging on where to start. How did you begin the process to develop these protocols?
Yeah, I can see where it's a big animal, right? Where do you start? There's the obvious like physical space and how do we put signage in this space? But really, we started with first wanting to understand what our employees wanted and what would make them feel safe in the space. So we actually started by surveying our employees, and I think a few of the speakers today talked about those surveys and the results. And there was a high incidence of folks who wanted to come back to the office. Some of the other big concerns they had were really around cleanability and safety, and were there enough cleaning protocols, and was the space going to be cleaned often enough for them to come back? So that was sort of our jumping off point. That was the place we started. Since then, we've actually done some focus workshops now that we're back in the office to really understand how's it working. And those workshops are also what kind of fostered us to make some changes and maybe communicate a little bit more. We have a lot of signage and safety protocols in place, and one of the comments from the workshop was, I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable because people aren't following the protocols or following the signage, and they're walking against the direction. So we were able to take those back and then communicate messages out to help reinforce these protocols. And I mentioned we're on version 5, so we keep changing it as information changes. But our next step, we just released version 5 of the playbook. So now that we've been back into the office in September, we're going to release another survey to our staff so we can compare and contrast to see how we're doing, and to see if there's a version 6 we need to create, because there's more that we need to do to, again, make our office a place that people want to be, but also a place that people feel safe to be. So hopefully that answers the question, Steph.
Yeah, it's definitely an evolving beast. So it's hard to say when the answers are and what they are, which ones are the right answers. So I'm going to keep going because I'm looking at time, but there's one here that I think Fatima is the best to answer. And the question asks, you suggested it can be looked at through a work styles lens. Can you expand upon that? Have you assessed individual work styles?
So I know that Anne spoke about the different types of individuals that we have, like whether you're an extrovert or introvert. And when it comes to work styles, we have, whether you're doing your focus work, your collaborative work, your social, your learn. if you're looking at those types of work styles, yes, throughout our office, we have a variety of spaces that support different types of work styles. When it comes to focus work, we didn't really focus on those spaces in this webinar because they were really the focus of our second webinar, where we looked at the individual workstations and how we could augment them and change them by, looking at the same principles, density, geometry, and division, to create safe work environments. So there are individuals, as you know, as you navigate your day, you're in a workstation, you're in a meeting room, you're in a collaborative setting, you're in the work cafe. So we did really take a look at our work environment holistically. We showed a few of our plans. So in each of our areas, whatever work style we were planning for, we applied those 3 principles. And of course, went above and beyond. I outlined the shared spaces principles because they are different to individual focus spaces. So when you're looking at your floor plan, you have to look at it holistically. You have to understand how your people are navigating their way through their day through the office, and then accommodate and change each of those work settings with the principles and strategies that make sense to make those spaces safe for your employees. I hope that answers the question.
It's a good answer, so I think there's one here that says, I'm a big believer in the positive benefits of returning to the office. Do you have any advice as to how you deal with an employee that does not want to return to the office? So I think, Julie, I'm going to send this one to you to see if you can give any advice or any answers to the question as you lead a team.
It's a really tough one for sure. I think that getting really to the root of why they don't want to return to the office is really important. Understanding if it's fear-based, if it's a health issue. We've had a number of those come up, and really trying to understand what is that factor that's preventing them from coming to the office. I would say here at POI, we've tried to go above and beyond creating a safe environment. Whenever we're moving through the office, we're wearing masks whenever we can't maintain that physical distance. So if we're in a meeting room where there's only supposed to be 3 people in there because we know we can't be physically distanced, if there are more, we're wearing masks. So really, it comes down to having those conversations to really understanding the why, and looking at, are there protocols or suggestions we can make if there's days of the week that are lighter in density in the office that would make them feel more comfortable to be in the office. We've discussed those types of things as well. I think Anne probably touched on it a little bit, that it's really this ecosystem, right? The ecosystem has grown. The home office isn't going to go away. We know people can focus in other places and be productive. Thank goodness for technology. It's made us, it's how we've survived for the past 7 months. So, we've kind of looked at it like there is this ecosystem, and we understand that, there is going to be a little bit of that work from home, work from the office, but really, I've asked my team to make their time in the office purposeful. So come and have those face-to-face interactions with folks. And if that's 3 days a week, that's 3 days a week. So it's really your own policies, and really, I think, getting to the root of why they don't want to come to the office. And of course, health issues, there's accommodations for those that we just have to consider. There's not really a great answer for it, to be honest, but so long as you're doing as much as you can and understanding the why, I think you're doing everything you possibly can to get everybody back.
That's great. Thanks, Julie. Okay, I think we have time for one last question, and I believe I skipped over it a little bit in the beginning. So Anne, I'm going to send this one right over to you. The question asks, have you seen a change in your company culture since the start and now during the pandemic compared to pre-pandemic times? What has your leadership team done to try and encourage the community engagement?
Great, thank you for that one. So the way I look at it, or the way to answer that question, let me just think about it for a second in terms of putting it into sort of categories that I've spoke about. So I think social capital is one thing to look at, reinforcing culture, and then communication. We're a pretty tight-knit organization here. We have already have strong social capital. Empathy and trust are sort of the key attributes. So We do know, though, that when we're physically together, we're much more attuned to each other. The reinforcing of the culture, we were noticing that with the lack of the physical presence, that we were missing some opportunities to recognize some great contributions or manage perhaps some actions or behaviors that aren't aligned with our culture. We were just missing those, and so there was a gap. And then finally, I think communication. So you've got social capital, reinforcing culture and communication. With communication, our leadership team set very early on to work early on the strategy of the return to the office with the surveys and updates, et cetera. So what I think, though, is that we really communicated a lot as far as what to expect when to return. And that, I think, helps people feel a little bit more safe, especially those that are very reticent to come back. And so communication is key. And our president had weekly, and still does, weekly company calls, or every other week now, in order to really express what the latest breaking news is for us and for our company procedures. So 3 things: social capital, reinforcing the culture, and communication, all part of how we've looked at it as a leadership team in order to have people feel good about coming back to the office. Thanks. Thanks for the question.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that brings us to the conclusion of the Q&A portion. So I'm going to send it back over to Nick for the closing remarks on this webinar.
Thanks, Steph, for asking those questions. That was great. And for the people that sent the questions in, thank you very much. You know, 2 things that came to mind when I was watching this today. One was I've been in contact with a number of large organizations in Toronto, and they are working within their existing space to figure this out right now. No one's making any massive drastic changes. So whatever that's good for, I'm not sure, but that seems to be the plan right now. And the expectation is that people will be coming back to the office. And when that is, they're not exactly sure, but that's what they're planning for. And it goes to the culture thing that Ann was talking about, I think, and the group was that I've been managing people for over 30 years and salespeople for over 30 years who tend to be mobile, and you don't see them that often, but everyone's experiencing how difficult it is to keep in touch, develop relationships, understand what's going on in the business working as mobile as we have been from home. So even though, yes, probably at home will be more in the future for us, there's no question that particularly with the changing demographics, which haven't changed, there's still going to be a tsunami of people retiring over the next 10 or 15 years. We have to make sure we understand our people and they understand what's expected of them to be successful in the workplace. So anyway, that's kind of what I got out of it. So thanks again for joining. Thanks to the panel for putting on the seminar and answering the questions as well. And everyone stay healthy. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.